Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squad for boxing news and views from around the internet. The paperwork has been sent by the IBF and WBO for their mandatory challenges to get their shot against unified champion Anthony Joshua. So that begs the question, what next? Because the clock is well and truly ticking, and you can hear that clock in the background. It will just keep ticking. 30 days now for Joshua and his promoter Eddie Hearn to make a deal to fight for one of these two belts, one of these titles. The mandatories have been called. And what's going to happen after 30 days? Well, purse bids could be called, or Joshua, if he decides to go for one over the other, doesn't work out some sort of agreement, he could be stripped. But there is the potential that there is going to be some sort of deal worked out here. One of the two fighters, Kubrat Pulev or Oleksandr Uysk, could decide to take a step-aside deal, get paid some money to wait. And possibly that could be what actually happens here, because Anthony Joshua has made no secret he wants to keep the belts together. He doesn't want them to fragment any further. He has 3 of the 4 main titles, plus the IBO, which isn't recognized as a major title, but that's not in the discussion here. It's the IBF and the WBO. So Usyk, he could end up still going off to fight Derek Chisora, maybe for a vacant title, maybe it's just for the mandatory being on the line. But the thing is here, the clock is well and truly ticking. So January is going to be crunch time to find out what happens here. And you can see on screen, this is the Dan Raphael story from ESPN. This is the IBF letter. Negotiations should commence immediately and be concluded by 11 January 2020. This is the IBF Championships Committee Chairman Carlos Ortiz Jr. wrote in the letter. If you are unable to come to an agreement for this bout, the IBF will call for a purse bid. So yeah, the WBO and IBF sending their letters to Joshua and his promoter one day apart, calling for their mandatories to be held. And obviously there is going to be possibly some tense moments, because one of the things I think has been maybe forgotten, even though Joshua wants to keep the belts together and Eddie Hearn works for Anthony Joshua, he's going to try do his best to try and keep these 3 together, work some sort of deal out for Usyk. Even though Usyk and Joshua are in the same stable, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily on the same page, because Usyk is on a co-promotional deal. His people will actually try to work out what is best for Oleksandr Uysk, and perhaps they think that if they can get Joshua stripped, that's going to be a better outcome for them and a potential title shot. So I don't think we should just think it's going to be naturally just harmonious here, and perhaps if he does accept a step aside Usyk, he could really sort of try to push for a big fee. It may not just be some nominal amount that Hearn and Joshua want to throw out, because Usyk, he's made no secret, he wants his title shot. He and his promoter Alexander Krasjuk have said, look, we've got our shot, we need to take care of our business, it's our time to have our heavyweight title fight. And if they were to really push to try and get Joshua stripped and not agree to a step aside, well then that could present an opportunity for Usyk to fight for a vacant title against someone in the Matchroom stable. And you have to step back and go, even though Eddie Hearn may actually like to see a belt dropped because it ends up in a title fight for Usyk, possibly against another Matchroom fighter, maybe in Joseph Parker or potentially Derek Chisora. And Parker is the highest ranked of those that could potentially get a shot at this point. But we have to see what happens with all that. But that might make more financial sense for Hearn and Matchroom in general. But it would be going against their client, Anthony Joshua, who said, no, let's keep it all together. I want to keep my titles together, defend them, line them up, Pulev and then Usyk, or the other way around, whatever order of, he wants to keep it together. So there could be a little bit of internal friction and ructions about what happens next, because Joshua, on one hand, he wants to keep the titles together, and Usyk, he wants just to have his title shot. And if he was to have a title shot and it ends up being against I don't want to say lesser fight, but you know what I mean, someone that maybe is a better style matchup for him, potentially easier to beat, that's probably the route that he may want to take, because remembering he's coming up from cruiserweight where he was the cruiserweight king. If he can get a title shot and win, that's a massive piece of legacy that he cements. And I think Joshua, the bigger fighter out of all the guys that could potentially face Usyk, he may be a harder nut to crack than, say, Joseph Parker or Derek Chisora, who are both very good fighters but may end up being better stylistically for Usyk to face. So the rubber is hitting the road, and maybe we will hear some grumblings from inside the matchroom sort of stable with the different fighters pushing for their different things, what they want to happen. But ultimately, there's only 30 days to find out. So I would just on the face of it think that potentially a deal could be worked out for step aside, but it may be a little bit rocky to get to that deal. Or maybe they just force Joshua to drop the belt. I don't think Usyk and his team will just roll over. He's not just outright promoted by Matchroom. So we have to consider these things. Even though that the WBO Usyk versus someone probably makes Matchroom more money overall because they're promoting the event. They would have, millions and millions of dollars on the line, and then they could potentially build up to some sort of unification. But that wouldn't sort of gel well with what Josh was publicly stated. So it's interesting. Dan Rafael saying 30 days for both of them. Letters have been delivered. They must make a deal. They must get this sorted out. Otherwise, a belt could be dropped. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.